Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the MNCAA Gopher Show, That Gopher Hockey Puckcast. Yes, to all the old listeners, watchers, we are folding that name back in here. So just be ready for it to be kind of dropped in every now and again. But the Gopher Show, I'm on the MNCAA Sota Pod Network. Nate Wells here, along with Drew Cove. We're very happy to be back talking Gophers again this week. Obviously, not preseason anymore, Nate, and we had a bona fide series against one team in one place, and the Gophers did something that they hadn't done in quite a while per your stat keeping and your records digging.
Yeah, Minnesota, I mean, for a good stretch of the last decade has struggled against Minnesota Duluth. That was not the case this weekend, where the Gophers went up to Duluth and swept UMD 7-5 win on Friday. That was not as close as the score says, and a 5-1 win on Saturday that was far closer than the score says.
Yep. Yeah, it was quite an interesting weekend, and as I alluded to earlier, Nate found the stat. The last time the Gophers swept UMD at Duluth was more than 10 years ago, October 2011. He found a pair of 5-4 wins. So, and as he also noted, that year was a bit special for the Gophers as well because they did make it to the Frozen Four. So, that season at least, but very interesting. The Gophers haven't done that in such a long time, and obviously we know there have been a lot of home and home series the last couple of years, and obviously with the conference breakup, news to everybody, they don't play the UMD 4 times a year, or they don't play them as frequently as they used to. But it is still noteworthy considering the run of success that UMD's had over the last decade plus, and 3 national championships. So in a couple of back-to-back ones, especially when the Gophers were kind of at their low point. So it did feel like the script was flipped, considering Bob's first time up there was kind of their banner raising ceremony, as we talked about last week, and kind of showing the Gophers team a hodgepodge group of Gophers that, hey, this is what it looks like. And since then, the Gophers have had a pretty good bill as well. Not nearly as successful as 2 national championships in a row, but a trip to the national championship game and some very competitive Frozen Four teams for sure. But yeah, Friday, like you said, 7-5 victory. Let's just jump in right here. And Nathan Arey in net, he had let in 5 goals and 17 shots. It was pretty dominant at first. I know watching some of the game was just it was a very onslaught of shots, and Minnesota, just like against Omaha, dominated in the shot category. And eventually had a lot fall in. 4-0 after 1, 5-1 after 2, and then just kind of a pouring on of goals from UMD near the end to narrow it, but never got as much more than, I think, a 2-goal lead. But Nate, I know you wanted to talk about a newcomer who looked really good in that game, Brody Zer.
Yeah, Brody Zer. I mean, both opening goal, both games this weekend, but just you wondered how Minnesota is going to respond to a loss in a game that they dominated fairly much, but did not get the win. Coming in up second week, going up to Duluth, which is a very hostile place to play. Anytime Minnesota travels in state, they get the best crowds going against. I mean, I've been to AmSoil covering it. You've been to AmSoil covering it. You know that the student sections are getting there an hour early. They're getting right on top of the action.
Oh yeah.
And to have Brody Zer, minute and a half into the game, just pull off a move, just pretty much. I mean, the Minnesota Duluth defenseman just RIP to his dignity on that one. Just and make it 1-0 so quickly and come out to a strong start. And honestly, that actually has been a constant for the Gophers so far this season in the 4 games, where how often do we hear that you need that strong goal to mean 10, you want to come out strong and be ready, and the Gophers have certainly been that each of the 4 games that they played so far this season. And 4-0 after 1, just taking the sails out of a Duluth team that will get better as the season comes along. Very young
freshman goalie.
It really seems, honestly, you kind of mentioned that 2018 banner raising game. It kind of feels like the script got switched a little bit, where with the 2 programs, where the Gophers are the older veteran team, the men among boys, versus a Duluth team that is kind of young and trying to find its way. And you see the talent, but also you have to learn how to win in college hockey. And as much as there's certainly some positives for Scott Sandelin's team to take away, you can tell that they're certainly a work in progress up in Duluth.
Yeah, definitely a work in progress. But even transitioning to Saturday as well. I mean, we saw. I thought I saw a much better improvement from UMD come the game on Saturday. Shots were a lot more even than what they were the night before, and they stayed pretty much with the Gophers most of the game up until the score, obviously. But I mean, it was within a couple of goals nearly the whole game, and then a couple of late goals and an empty netter icing it away. But UMD stayed into it, but man, I think the Gophers, from a UMD team that learned a lot from the Friday night and tried to employ it Saturday, I think the one thing that the Gophers still did a lot better was just getting in the way of just being a pests in the neutral zone and just taking away pucks and just being pesty like that. It didn't really. It was kind of as simple as that they just kept getting in the way, and that they put themselves positionally in a good spot to succeed. And it certainly came with goals too, but it was definitely it looked like a very complete full team effort, not just all right, we are gonna high fly and score a couple of goals and just hope and pray that it stays that way. But it looked really good for most of the game for the Gophers to lock it down. The middle period a little bit was a little bit of a slowdown, at least for me. But I think as you can ask early on, it was a pretty complete showing from the defensive and offensive effort.
For the weekend as a whole, you have to feel, if you're Bob Moscow, just great because you have a team that offensively is firing on all cylinders. You had two games that there was a couple opportunities for Duluth to get into, but your team played there. And yet at the same time, you still have things to work on, but do so in a safe environment where you get to be, hey, we need to finish these games. It was 4-0. It was 5-1 after 2. This game got too close on Friday night. So you get to at least have a little bit of that where it's, hey, you might be playing well, but you can't let this keep going on. You have to keep building on this. And then you kind of saw that into Saturday where the score makes it look a lot more lopsided with a couple goals in the third period. But then you still have the goals that were scored where as much as we talked about the Zemer, the Deke, and the beautiful goal on Friday, you have a lot of goals that it's beautiful passing. It's getting to the net. It's making sure that you're getting in front of them and you're getting to the dirty areas, and they're working for the goals. And that's something you need to do against a team like Duluth. That's a thing that you need to do against the top teams in college hockey for as many shots as you're going to be able to put up. The way you're going to score goals most of the time is going to be, hey, you are either creating a disadvantage or you are getting down there, creating a second and third opportunity. You're getting into those dirty areas and you're able to score. And I mean, there's a couple opportunities for Duluth to tie the game in the second period, but it didn't really feel like there was a point where you felt that the Gophers were not in control of the game for the entire weekend. And I mean, that is a credit to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think the defense looked solid as well. And Liam Suer looked really good in that rebound game on Saturday. I think he looked really solid. He was where he needed to be. He didn't make, it felt like it didn't notice him too much, which I think for a goalie, like a good defender, is a good thing because that way you're not out of position. You're not sprawling to make saves. I think he played really well against a team that certainly had a lot of emotional will to try and come back and give it their all to try and get a split out of this series. But very, very important, complete game by the Gophers. And even like you mentioned, just like the second chance shots, a guy like Jimmy Snuggerud, I think being in on some of those, like, all right, just being right down near the net and not necessarily scoring on a flashy transition play, but he came in and kind of, still ripping some slap shots, but he's scoring off of different rebounds and different ways that he's getting the puck. So it's good to see that the guy that is kind of most associated with the high flying prowess is finding those areas to utilize the shots in different ways. And I know, Nate, that kind of leads me to at least part of my next point. One of the biggest things of the weekend we mentioned the top guys, and you mentioned it as well, I think, in our notes before the show too. But you said 13 different players have scored in the 4 games so far. The completeness down this lineup so far, obviously not playing against a lot of Big Ten opponents yet, or not a huge sample size against ranked opponents just yet. But you got to think that's a great sign for things to come, because I know we have preached probably every week on this podcast, as long as we've ever done it, depth is key for this Gophers team.
You need depth. It's the goal for the Puck Dynasty. But yeah, I have to credit to Gopher game notes for that stat. So it was 13 different players. It's tied with RPI for the national lead, and it took Minnesota until last season, December 1st, to reach that mark. Yeah, as much as we preach depth, it's probably one of our. You take a drink every time we do so.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our good friend Eric Vigo talking about Sammy Walker. Like, you know, it's going to come up at some point.
Every week without fail. Sammy Walker on the wing.
Sammy Walker on the ring. But but the depth that they have, where you can put Matthew Wood, Jimmy Snugger, Oliver Moore on 3 different lines, and you're making teams pick their poison. Right now, certainly one line is more productive than the other 2. That's not to say that the other 2 are struggling, where it's Moore has a goal, Snugger has a goal. They certainly are all creating chances. And then your 4th line is you have 2 elder statesmen, 2 high quality players in Hughlin and Nevers. So, I mean, this is the depth that certainly Minnesota has been asking for, and certainly one that is certainly a strength, especially in comparison to some of the other teams in that top tier nationally.
Yeah, it's incredible, because I mean, even locally, you see the Wild grapple with this a lot. Whether to stack all the talent on one line or be able to parse it out between the lines and have it be successful. They have had less success of finding it be successful, spreading it out, which is kind of showing, all right, sometimes they're a one-line team, but this Gophers team, they have found that success in putting their biggest stars up and down the lineup and making everyone else around them better. And I think that that just naturally goes into one of the things I was most excited about, and I think Gopher fans should be the most excited about this early on in the season. And again, not like, take this with the grain of salt. We are 4 games in, everybody. Just seeing how excited that we could be, though, about this is that the Connor Kurth, Jimmy Clark, Matthew Wood line. I implore everyone, please leave a comment, tweet at us. We need to have a nickname for this line, because if they keep playing the way they're playing, Kurth, Wood, and Clark, if they keep playing this way together, we need some efficient way of talking about them. And there have been a couple of good nicknames of some lines in the past that have gone about, but if you have any good ideas, please tweet them at us, because they're not coming too easily to me. I mean, Matthew Wood's not the center on this line, so I was like, oh, it's the Canadian sandwich. It doesn't work. It's not a good one. So we need something better than that, or else we're going to keep going with it. So you guys got to send us some of the stuff. But beyond the nickname for the line, boy, Nate, have they been playing well? Have they been playing amazing? And I think this weekend was just another example of how great that line is together, and how good Matthew Wood is to make those other guys look really good. I think Connor Kurth is really good in his own right, but he's making him look otherworldly right now.
He is the difference. Honestly, it feels like right now through 4 games, Matthew Wood is kind of who you're hoping Jimmy Snugger was going to be for Oliver Moore last season, where you're able to kind of you're able to be the primary driver of a line, as opposed to someone who is a great secondary option on the line and just brings things together. And I think, honestly, I'd say that I think those got better as the season went along, and Snugger certainly is someone who is bringing that now. But when you have 2 different options like of that caliber, where you can certainly split things up. And as you mentioned, the Wild kind of stacking lines, I think we see this throughout college hockey, where it's where a lot of those top teams are. It's, do we make one star-studded line? Do we split people up? In the Gophers case, it almost feels like, hey, you can do both right now. If you're having a player like Connor Kurth, who has 4 goals right now, near the top nationally in
Mm-hmm.
points. Jimmy Clark, certainly, you hope that the consistency that he continues at this pace. We saw a bit of it at the beginning of last year, but he's certainly taken that extra step. And I mean, Matthew Wood has so far everything he's been as advertised, even with just being the focus on with defenses. You have them. I mean, Omaha is a tough defense. Scott Sandelin with UMD teams are always very tough to go against. And it's going to continue to be the case with Minnesota's non-conference schedule, but they're making things look easy at times, and that is really a testament to Matthew Wood.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible, and I think that's just a testament to the depth of chemistry, I think I should say, because you can have all these individual stars that are going to be good no matter what, but I mean, find the right chemistry and you'll make bigger stars out of that. And like I said before, I think Connor Kurth's path has been coming for some time, I think, for the Gophers, but it sometimes it takes a line mate to help spark that creativity. And to his credit, he's putting them home when he gets his chances. Wood's giving him incredible looks, and he is finishing. And that's not to say Jimmy Clark isn't either. Jimmy Clark had 4 assists on the weekend. So very, very positive to see from what on the line chart was Minnesota's 4th line this weekend. But you can tell in my voice that Bob doesn't put any stock into that whatsoever. But it is great to see that you can have a line like that, and you can still have Oliver Moore and Jimmy Snugger not even mentioned. But like, it is interesting to see too, because I think a lot of people were hoping last year and into this year that Snuggerud needs to have the breakout to be the guy. But I mean, forget Snuggerud, not seriously, but like forget, like, don't completely independent him. These guys could have 30s on their stat lines in terms of goals or assists. I think almost certainly points that they could get there if they can keep this up. But I mean, a goal a game pace, more than an assist and a half a game pace for some of the guys. It's an incredible run they're on right now, and if they can keep it up, that's going to be extremely important for a Gophers team that needs a game-breaking line as the season goes along, to potentially beat a hot goalie that they run into somewhere down the line. It's only good things at the start, but I know I got really excited when I keep watching these highlights, and that just game after game they continue to look really good. And let's definitely come back to it when we have more than 4 games to work with, Nate, for sure. We'll hold ourselves to that, but some positive signs, I think, for the Gophers early on with these guys.
Certainly, I don't expect them to keep averaging 5 goals per game. At the same time, I mean, that's what it's 20 through 4. So, but if you have 13 players scoring 20 goals, I think there's only 5 who have. I think it's 5 who have multiple goals, and only 3 of them are forwards. So, at the very least, like it's going that everyone is able to contribute. Speaks really well right now, but at the same time, you do have a couple. You certainly can look, and you're like, there are 2, 3, 4 lines that are able to contribute on any given night, and that is certainly something that is the envy of most teams in college hockey. Yep,
exactly, and that also coming in on the weekend too. Gophers moving up a spot to number 5, and they do have they're just like an Ivy League school.
Yes,
Minnesota is the same as an Ivy League school. They got 1 first place voter, 48 for Denver, 1 for Minnesota, 1 for Cornell. So I don't know if that's a jumping off the beat gift from Jess Myers as he moves now from college to the Wild. But who knows? I'm not sure that he is a vote anyways. But it is interesting to see that at least someone nationally has some confidence in the Gophers to be a bona fide squad right away. But definitely some shuffling in the rankings and kind of leading to certainly our look around the conference and around the state. Ohio State swept Wisconsin. Ohio State, Nate, if you remember, they were at the bottom of the conference last year. Swept Wisconsin 2-1 in OT and then 2-1 in regulation the next day.
Yeah, and they were picked to finish last this year too. So, I mean, Steve Ehrlich, I think, got his 200th win on Friday as Ohio State head coach. So you get to at least have a few weeks where Ohio State leads the Big Ten. is a great thing. Wisconsin last year surprised everybody by getting out to a hot start. Right now, the Badgers are struggling to score goals. You can make the argument that maybe they ran into a little bit of a hot goaltender one of the nights against Ohio State, but it is a work in progress right now for my K-Steen squad. They're not as bad as their record, but at the same time, if you are spending every game struggling to need to come back or struggling to get goals in there, at a certain point that either needs to change or that is who you are.
Yeah, it's definitely looking like Wisconsin is certainly on the struggle bus for the first as one of the more notable teams on that bus right now for the as far as the Big Ten goes. But Michigan as well, still finding their footing, splitting shutouts, I guess, trading shutouts with St. Cloud, beating St. Cloud 3-0 on Friday and then losing 4-0 Saturday. Notre Dame split with Alaska Fairbanks, a future Gophers opponent, come Thanksgiving weekend. Beat them 4-1 Friday, lost a 1-0 shutout on Saturday. Michigan State doesn't really count because they played Windsor. They beat up on the Canadian College 5-0. But one thing that impacts the Gophers in the long run, not right now, it impacts the Gophers in the long run, Nate. Omaha swept by Augustana, and some of you may be asking if you haven't been paying attention too long. What's Augustana? They're brand new.
Boston? No. It's a
yes. Yeah.
I hope
not the Duluth August, not CJ Ham's alma mater.
I hope somebody gets the reference there, but but no, it's a second year. Old friend Garrett Boyne is the head coach of the Vikings down in Sioux Falls. Certainly a team that surprised a lot of people last year in their first year, making some noise, having some upsets, beating several of their now CCHA foes. They kind of are in a weird spot where they play some, they don't play some. Thankfully, we're not the CCHA podcast because they have to do real math this season.
Well, they have to do the math about who's even in the conference after this year.
Yeah. Yeah, they have their but it's one of those things. I think you look at how Omaha beat Minnesota, and you look at what Augustana's been able to do, and it is a little bit kind of shows what can happen on any given weekend. I mean, the weekend before, LIU, another newcomer, went and I believe beat Augustana too. So the Sharks on that end, but Omaha, I mean, they beat Minnesota, but it was certainly outshot heavily. It was low scoring. They got the overtime winner, but you can't be too surprised then if you go against another defensive team and you're not able to get the offense going and you run into a defensive, or if you're relying on your goalie to win every game, their goalie's not going to win every game. So it shows what can happen on any given weekend. But also, if you're Minnesota, getting those 2 wins against another NCHC foe is certainly going to help too in the long run. We won't mention the word, but you know what it is.
You know what it is.
You know what it is, listener.
Dear listener, if you've been listening to us long enough, you know exactly what that is.
Yeah. And if this is your first time listening to us, like great one to choose.
Yeah, what a good one. I mean, yeah, it's not often. Maybe they only listen to our podcast whenever the Gophers sweep UMD in Duluth.
Yeah, so they missed last year because it was like the first time like outside the COVID year, it's the first time like 60 years that the Gophers and Bulldogs didn't play. But hey, welcome aboard. Welcome.
Everyone. We hope you can continue listening, even despite the way in which you found us. But it's a very interesting weekend, and just like we keep saying early in the season, like you said before, college hockey is weird at this time of year. A lot of different things can happen. A lot of teams don't know what they are yet. We don't know what the teams are. They don't know what they are themselves yet. So we'll see as things shake out as the larger sample size of the season. That's why they play the games. We're going to find out what teams are really bona fide and which ones aren't. And certainly we'll be keeping an eye on Wisconsin for sure. And maybe Omaha as a passing glance. I know Omaha's they're a good Western team. I know Western hockey snobbery here, even though Nate's in New York, but it's definitely a fun time to pay attention to how dominant the Western game has been over the last however many years.
Yeah, this time of year is almost like when you start like a jigsaw puzzle and you're trying to like sort the pieces out. You have everything, but you don't know how it all fits together. You're seeing kind of little bits and pieces, and hopefully that it'll make more sense as you go along. And that's always how I feel it is, because you're like Michigan, like because we're trying to figure out a couple weeks ago what Minnesota being St. Cloud State in an exhibition meant, and I still don't think it really means too much.
Yeah.
It's tough to still figure out, but you're like, oh, well, St. Cloud is still playing some really tight games. They played, I would say they played a tight one against St. Thomas. They shut out Michigan. They nearly shut out Michigan twice. It was the Friday game was 3-0 against the Wolverines in Ann Arbor, but it was 0-0 until the third period, before Michigan put it away. So you're like, okay, well, maybe this means that Minnesota's offense is a little better, or maybe just, hey, they caught them at the right time. We're going to see, hey, maybe we're trying to figure out what losing Omaha means. We'll figure out what playing St. Thomas in a home and home this weekend will mean down the line, and if there's anything that will fit on that end. But yeah. So hopefully that was a great segue, Drew. But
it is a great segue because the Gophers are playing in their second longest home and home series of the season, going from Mariucci all the way over across the river to I guess not even across the river, but going across town, one border over to St. Paul to play at the X against St. Thomas on Saturday night. So 5:30 game early on Friday at Mariucci. So plan accordingly. Late game at the X on Saturday. But yeah, definitely an interesting series, always with St. Thomas, as we saw last year. Still can't make the tournament, but they'll be busting the door down very soon, because they're a competitive team, and they are. I'm going to stick to my word. I thought they weren't going to have much of a chance early on, but Reco and the coaching staff and the players have really turned the program into something that's very competitive early on. And they're going to give the Gophers fits for years, and it's going to be a great time to be a college hockey fan in the Twin Cities, because there's going to be some very fun rivalry that develops, I think, between these two teams as time goes on.
There will. I mean, right now, look, I'm happy St. Thomas is finding its legs. I did not really. I thought that Reco was the right choice to build a program with St. Thomas in terms of the building part, where, hey, let's rally an alumni base, let's build a building. That's what he did out in Miami. I didn't know if he was the right one to actually put together a competitive program after how things ended at Miami. But I mean, credit to the Tommies. It's great to see, honestly. Like I have an affinity for St. Thomas. My dad and I, for years and years and years, we always go to watch St. Thomas football games. Obviously, I'm a St. Paul guy, so that's always great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. we got Minneapolis and St. Paul with both schools that have Minneapolis and St. Paul campuses. So, but it's great to have another hockey option in the Twin Cities. I'm sure, like, as time goes on, and I'm sure first on the St. Thomas side, there's probably less of a bromance. But like I'm in New York right now. Yankees and Mets fans are kind of finding ways to be happy for one another. Although the Mets season ended yesterday, or as we record this, or it's over. It's over as you're listeing.
Breaking news if you're a Mets fan that hasn't been paying attention.
Yeah.
Sorry that we just ruined it for you.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, Mets. You're very, very entertaining for all the right reasons this season, and just really general. I don't have a cheered interest, but man, the Mets are like, if you ever get a chance to watch the Mets broadcast, it's really entertaining. I'm just gonna throw that one out there. But that's how I feel. That's how I feel about St. Thomas, though. I'm happy to see them do well. I think the coaches in the CCHA picked them to win the league, which is, again, it's crazy that they are not eligible to make the NCAA tournament, but they are playing well enough to look like they can possibly win a title, and do what they can on that end. There's a lot of familiar names if you're college hockey, if you're Minnesota hockey on that team. Obviously, I mean, we touched on Reco, who's still it seems like he's been around college hockey forever and he has in a way, but still just I mean, now he's still a younger guy, which is just he's been along that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible. I think a lot of different guys on this team that a lot of Gopher fans I think will recognize in the short term. Liam Malmquist and Ryder Donovan, both from Minnesota, but both played at Wisconsin very recently. I think a couple of Cretan Durham Hall players. I believe Grant Doctor played there, as well as Matt Gleason as well.
Matt Gleason. Yeah,
I wrote a story on him a bunch of years ago for the Hockey Magazine when he was back down there, but coming from CC over to St. Thomas. But and as Nate mentioned before we started the podcast, some old school Don Lucia recruits to the Gophers. Jake Ratzlaff from Rosemont. And I believe Jake Bracchini. You know, it's a bunch of different guys that have had Minnesota connections, and obviously most of the team is from Minnesota anyways, if not all. But it is still a couple of Canadian goalies for sure. Every Minnesota college hockey team has to have a couple of Canadian goalies, but it's definitely another team that's going to have as many connections to Minnesota as the Gophers do. And it's fun to just keep some of those players that you saw at either the high school tournament or other colleges around, and you're going to be recognizing them here when the Gophers come and play them. But as we mentioned too, Friday, 5:30 at Mariucci, 8 p.m. Saturday at the X. And Nate, one closing thought from you. I know you've been covering the game a lot longer than I have, but your favorite Reco story. We did this last week with your Frank Siratori story, but your favorite Reco Blasi story.
So I have a few, and I can't tell them because honestly, they aren't my stories. They're stories I have heard from people over the years. I've come across, and I've covered Reco a few times. Minnesota, Miami really didn't really cross paths too often. The Gophers were kind of down when Miami's in their highs, the late 2000s, early 2010s. There was a Hockey City Classic in Chicago where they didn't play each other, but they had the other game. So most of my Reco stories are from other people, and I don't feel right actually telling those ones on that end. But like the one I got that I always really enjoy is he is famous for going the really early goalie pull. And we've seen more and more coaches do it, but for me in my head, it's Reco and it's Dean Blaze are the ones who we're down by 2. There's 6 minutes left. Screw it. We're going to pull the goalie. and famously, it almost worked for Miami 2015. I think they're down by 3. There's 9 minutes left. Playing Providence in Providence. They pull the goalie. They come very close to getting the win that way. And every time I always do Reco would have pulled the goalie by now or something is like a running bit. I've had that on Twitter for probably, I don't know, like a decade or so at this point. He always likes it. He always says something there. And I was like, hey, credit. You find it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't think he follows me, but he finds it and he likes it. And I'm like, all right, I will give you that credit. Yeah.
Hey, Patrick Waugh has nothing on Reco. That's for sure.
Yeah, so exactly.
Let's give credit where credit's due. And we'll be watching, in case they're down by a few, we'll be sure to be watching. And if anyone wants to tweet at Nate to make sure that he knows that it's goalie pull time for Reco and the St. Thomas Tommies. But Nate, I think that does it for us this week. Nice recap on the UMD series, preview on the St. Thomas series, and then we'll start getting to a bunch of other games closer and closer to the conference season. But I think for this week, that does it for us. Nate Wells, Drew Cove back with you. We'll be back again next week. And until next time, we'll see you at the rink.